Captain Jiwon Kim stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the massive Talaxian station grow larger on the viewscreen. The station called Orbital 7 floated in space like a small city, with lights blinking across its metal surface. Jiwon had made this trip many times before. It was a simple job: deliver messages, pick up trade agreements, and return to Earth. Nothing ever went wrong on these missions. Beside her, Dr. Minho Park checked his translation device. Minho was good at understanding alien languages, and he had learned to speak with the Talaxians without making mistakes. He looked nervous today, though Jiwon could not understand why. This was just another routine visit. "We're cleared for docking," said the pilot. "Bay 7 as usual." The ship moved smoothly into the docking bay. The metal clamps locked onto the hull with a soft thud. Jiwon stood and straightened her uniform. "Minho, you're with me. Everyone else stay on the ship and run standard checks." In the cargo bay, a young intelligence officer named Hyun-woo Choi was running diagnostics on the communication systems. Hyun-woo was new to the crew, just 24 years old, and he took his job very seriously. He wanted to prove himself useful. As the captain and doctor left the ship, Hyun-woo connected his tablet to the main antenna array. He was checking for any interference or unusual signals that might affect their communications. That was when he saw it. A small blip on his screen, a transmission that should not be there. Hyun-woo frowned and tapped his tablet. The signal was encrypted, bouncing between several relay points. It was not coming from the station's main communication hub. It was coming from somewhere else, somewhere hidden. His training told him to report it immediately, but curiosity made him pause. He ran a decryption program, something he had learned at the academy. The program was not supposed to break military-grade encryption, but this signal was old, using outdated security protocols. After 10 minutes, the message began to decode. Hyun-woo's eyes widened as he read the words: coordinates, security codes, and something else. A cargo manifest that listed human juveniles as items being transported. His hand started shaking. This could not be real. He checked the transmission again, looking for any sign that it was fake or corrupted. But the data was clear. The coordinates pointed to a facility in the Kepler belt, a remote area of this star system. The manifest showed regular shipments over the past 10 years. Hyun-woo ran from the cargo bay, his tablet clutched in his hand. He found Captain Jiwon in the station's diplomatic lounge, sitting across from a Talaxian official. The alien was tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. Jiwon was discussing shipping routes and trade quotas, looking bored. "Captain," Hyun-woo said, his voice urgent, "I need to speak with you now." Jiwon looked annoyed, but she saw the fear in the young officer's eyes. She excused herself and followed Hyun-woo into a private corridor. "This better be important," she said. Hyun-woo showed her the tablet. "I found this transmission. It was encrypted, but I managed to decode part of it. Captain, I think the Talaxians are transporting human children." Jiwon stared at the screen. Her face went pale. "Are you sure this is real?" "I checked it 3 times. The coordinates are in this system. We could reach them in 6 hours." Jiwon's mind raced. This was beyond her authority. She should report this to Earth Command and wait for orders. But if these transmissions were real, if human children were actually being held somewhere in this system, every hour of delay could mean more suffering. She thought about her own daughter back on Earth, safe and happy. She thought about what she would want someone to do if it were her child. "Get back to the ship," Jiwon said. "Tell the pilot to prepare for immediate departure. I'll make our excuses to the Talaxians." 20 minutes later, the horizon's edge undocked from Orbital 7. Jiwon had told the station authorities that they had a reactor malfunction and needed to make repairs. It was a weak excuse, but it bought them time. Once they were away from the station, Jiwon called all crew members to the bridge. "We have a situation," she said, and explained what Hyun-woo had found. The crew members looked shocked. Some looked angry. All of them looked ready to act. Dr. Minho spoke first. "If this is true, if they're really taking our children, we have to stop it." "We're one ship," said the pilot. "If the Talaxians catch us investigating this, they could destroy us." "Then we'll be careful," Jiwon said. "But we're going. Anyone who wants to object can do so now." Nobody objected. The horizon's edge flew toward the Kepler belt using minimal power to avoid detection. The coordinates led them to a small asteroid with a facility built into its surface. From a distance, it looked like a mining operation, but the security was too heavy for a simple mine. Guard towers dotted the surface. Ships patrolled the area. "How do we get inside?" asked Minho. Hyunwoo studied his tablet. The transmission included security codes. They might still work. It was a dangerous gamble, but they had come too far to turn back. Jiwon guided the ship toward a landing bay, transmitting the stolen codes. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the bay doors opened. "They bought it," whispered the pilot. The ship landed inside the facility. The crew put on their weapons and moved carefully through the corridors. The facility was cold and quiet. They followed signs written in Talaxian script until they heard something that made their blood run cold. Children crying. They found the detention area behind a heavy locked door. Hyunwoo used the security codes to open it. Inside were rows of cells, and in those cells were human children. Some were as young as 5 years old. Some were teenagers. All of them looked thin and frightened. They wore gray uniforms and had numbers stamped on their wrists. Minho fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "What have they done?" The children stared at them with hollow eyes. One girl, about 12 years old, stepped forward. "Are you real?" she asked in a tiny voice. "Or is this another test?" Jiwon's hands clenched into fists. "We're real. We're from Earth. We're here to take you home." The crew worked quickly, opening cells and leading children toward the ship. They found 23 children in total. Some could barely walk. Others clung to the crew members, too afraid to believe they were being rescued. Alarms started blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the facility. They had been discovered. "Run!" Jiwon shouted. The crew ran through the corridors carrying the smallest children. Gunfire echoed behind them. Talaxian guards were coming. They reached the landing bay just as enemy soldiers appeared at the far end of the corridor. The pilot started the engines while the others scrambled aboard. Bullets sparked off the ship's hull. Jiwon was the last one in, firing her weapon to cover the others. The bay doors were closing. The pilot launched the ship with seconds to spare, scraping the hull against the closing doors. "Get us out of here," Jiwon yelled. The Horizon's Edge blasted out of the asteroid facility. Talaxian patrol ships gave chase, firing weapons. The small Earth vessel dodged and weaved through the asteroid belt. One shot hit their starboard engine, causing alarms to sound throughout the ship. "We can't take many more hits." The pilot shouted. "Just get us to the jump point," Jiwon said. The ship shook with each impact. In the cargo bay, Minho held the children close, telling them everything would be okay. Some of them were crying. Some just stared with empty eyes. The jump point appeared ahead, a shimmering area of space where they could escape into faster-than-light travel. The patrol ships fired one last barrage. Sparks flew from the control panels. And then they were through, leaving the Talaxian ships behind. In the silence that followed, Jiwon walked back to the cargo bay. She looked at the rescued children, at their thin faces and haunted eyes. She looked at Hyunwoo, who was recording everything with his tablet. Documentation, evidence. "Take us home," she said quietly. "Earth needs to see this." The government chambers in Geneva were packed with officials from every continent. President Daeun Kang stood at the podium, her face grim. Behind her, a massive screen showed footage that Captain Jiwon's crew had recorded. The world's leaders watched in stunned silence as images of frightened children in cells appeared before them. General Tae-hyung-nam sat in the military section, his jaw tight. He had seen combat before. He had seen soldiers die, but nothing had prepared him for this. These were children. Human children who had been stolen from their families and sold like objects. Ambassador Yuna Shin sat in the diplomatic section, her hands trembling. She had worked with the Talaxians for 15 years. She had attended their ceremonies, learned their customs, and negotiated treaties. And all that time, this had been happening. In the public gallery, a woman named Gina Lee watched the screen with tears streaming down her face. Her daughter Minji was on that screen. Minji had disappeared 3 years ago from a frontier colony. The authorities had said she was lost in an accident. But there she was, alive, wearing a gray uniform with a number on her wrist. President Daeun let the footage play without interruption. The chamber was silent except for the sound of children crying on the recording. When it finished, she spoke. 23 children were rescued from that facility. Our intelligence suggests there are hundreds more, possibly thousands scattered across Talaxian space. These children were taken from frontier colonies over the past decade. They were kidnapped, transported across space, and sold as slaves. Angry voices erupted throughout the chamber. People stood and shouted. Some demanded immediate action. Others called for caution. President Dayon raised her hand for silence. We have sent formal demands to the Talaxian Empire. We want all human captives returned immediately. We want reparations. We want justice. She paused. They have refused. They claim this was the work of criminals operating without government knowledge. They offer no compensation, no apology, nothing. General Taehyung stood. Madam President, with respect, words will not bring those children home. We need to prepare for military action. Military action against an empire that controls 200 star systems? Asked a European delegate. That would be suicide. Then what do you suggest? Taehyung snapped. That we politely ask them to stop stealing our children? The chamber erupted again. President Dayon called for order, but the anger was too strong. Finally, she made a decision that would change everything. We will vote, she announced. All in favor of declaring war on the Talaxian Empire, raise your hand. The room went silent. This was not a small decision. This was choosing to fight an enemy far more powerful than Earth. This was choosing possible destruction over submission. Slowly, hands began to rise. First one, then 10, then 50, then hundreds. When the count was finished, the vote was nearly unanimous. Earth was going to war. Outside the chamber, Gina Lee was approached by reporters. She had not planned to speak publicly. She just wanted to find her daughter and bring her home. But when the cameras turned to her, something inside broke open. They took my Minji when she was 9 years old, Gina said, her voice shaking. She was playing near our home on the colony. I looked away for just a minute.
Just 1 minute.
And she was gone. The authorities told me she probably wandered into the wilderness and got lost. They told me to accept it and move on. Gina's voice grew stronger, but she didn't get lost. She was stolen, taken by these monsters who saw her as nothing more than property, and for 3 years she has suffered things I cannot even imagine. My little girl who loved to draw pictures and sing songs has been living in a cage. She looked directly into the camera. They took our children. They stole their innocence. They stole their childhood. They will answer for this. I don't care how powerful they are. I don't care how many ships they have. They hurt our babies and they will pay. The video went viral across all human colonies. Within hours, it had been viewed billions of times. Gina's words became a rallying cry. Protest marches filled the streets of every major city. Young people lined up at military recruitment centers. Factory workers volunteered for overtime to build weapons and ships. Humanity was angry. Ambassador Yuna Shin requested a private meeting with President Dayon. They met in a secure room with only General Taehyung present. I need to tell you something, Yuna said quietly. Something I should have reported years ago. Go on, Dayon said. 5 years ago, I was attending a diplomatic function on a Talaxian world. I saw a human child serving drinks at the event. A young boy, maybe 10 years old. He looked terrified. When I asked about him, my Talaxian host laughed and said he was a servant they had purchased. Yuna's voice cracked. I reported it to my superiors. I demanded an investigation, but I was told to stay quiet. The government did not want to risk the trade agreements with the Talaxians. They said it was probably an isolated incident. They said starting a conflict over one child was not worth the economic damage. You knew, Taehyung said, his voice cold. You knew and you stayed silent. I tried, Yuna said desperately. But I was just one person. They threatened to end my career. They said I was being too emotional. Eventually, I convinced myself that maybe they were right. Maybe it was just one case. She looked at the floor. I was a coward. President Dayon was quiet for a long moment. You were put in an impossible position. The people who silenced you are the ones who should feel shame, not you. But now, Ambassador, you have a chance to make this right. I need you to tell everything you know. Every suspicion, every rumor, everything. Yuna nodded and began to speak. She told them about whispered conversations at diplomatic events, about Talaxian officials who made jokes about their human servants, about luxury markets where wealthy aliens could purchase exotic slaves from primitive worlds. The more she spoke, the clearer the picture became. This was not a criminal operation. This was built into the very structure of Talaxian society. How many? Taehyung asked. How many of our people do you think they have? Thousands, Yuna whispered. Maybe more. The next day, President Dayun called the rescued children and their families to a private meeting. Medical teams had been caring for the children, treating their injuries and malnutrition. Psychologists had been talking with them, trying to understand what they had endured, but Dayun wanted to hear directly from them. Gina Lee held her daughter Minji close. The girl was thin and pale, and she flinched at every sudden noise. But she was alive. She was home. Other families were reunited with children they thought were dead. There were tears and embraces, but there was also anger. These children had been changed by what happened to them. They had scars that would never fully heal. One teenager named Soonbok stood before the president. He was 16 now, but he had been taken when he was 12. He spoke in a flat, emotionless voice. They told us Earth had forgotten about us, Soonbok said. They said nobody was looking. Nobody cared. They said humans were weak and pathetic, and that we should be grateful to serve a superior species. That's a lie, Dayun said firmly. We never stopped looking. We never forgot. I know that now, Soonbok replied. But for 4 years I believed it. We all did. They broke us down until we accepted it as truth. He looked at the president with hard eyes. There are others like me still out there. Hundreds of them. They're waiting, believing nobody is coming. You need to prove them wrong. That evening, President Dayun addressed the entire human race. Every screen on Earth and every colony showed her face. My fellow humans, she began. Today we face a choice. We can submit to a galaxy that sees us as inferior. We can accept that our children are not safe. We can bow down to a power greater than ourselves. Or we can fight, she paused. Make no mistake, this will not be easy. The Talaxian Empire is vast and powerful. They have technology we cannot match. They have resources we cannot compete with. Many of us will die in this fight. But I ask you this. What kind of people would we be if we did nothing? Her voice grew stronger. We will not bow. We will not forget. We will bring every single one of our children home, no matter what it takes, and we will show this galaxy that humanity is not prey. We are not slaves. We are survivors, fighters, and protectors of our young. The Talaxian Empire thinks we will back down. They think one small planet cannot challenge their authority. They are about to learn how wrong they are. President Dayun's face hardened. As of this moment, Earth is at war. Commander Ji-hoon Park sat in the cockpit of his fighter, watching the stars through the canopy. Behind him, 11 other ships waited in the darkness of space. They were Ghost Squadron, Earth's most elite pilots, and they were about to make history. All units radio silence, Ji-hoon whispered into his mic. We go in 3 minutes. The target was a Talaxian supply convoy carrying weapons and food to their military bases. Intelligence suggested the convoy would be lightly defended. The Talaxians did not expect Earth to strike so far from home. That was their mistake. Ji-hoon thought about the children he had seen on the news. He thought about their hollow eyes and thin faces. His hands tightened on the controls. This was for them. 2 minutes, he said quietly. Across the galaxy, Captain Yoonji Bae stood on the bridge of the Defiance, Earth's newest and most advanced warship. It was not as big as Talaxian battleships, but it was fast and deadly. Yoonji had handpicked her crew from the best officers in the fleet. Status report, she said calmly. All systems green, replied her tactical officer. Enemy battle group detected at coordinates 773. 3 cruisers and 5 escort ships. Yoonji smiled coldly. The Talaxians were patrolling their territory, confident and comfortable. They had no idea the Defiance was here, hiding behind a small moon. Charge weapons, Yoonji ordered. Prepare for full burn on my mark. In a secure facility on Earth, Specialist Dongyun Ko sat before a wall of computer screens. He was not a soldier. He was a hacker, a cyber warfare expert. His battlefield was digital, but his weapons were just as dangerous as any gun. Beginning infiltration of Talaxian communication network, he said to his team. Phase 1 in 3, 2, 1, execute. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Lines of code scrolled past on his screens. The Talaxians had good security, but they had never faced someone like Donghyun before. Back with Ghost Squadron, Ji-hoon's timer reached 0. All units, light them up, he shouted. 12 fighters dropped their stealth shields and ignited their engines. They screamed toward the Talaxian convoy like angry hornets. The enemy ships barely had time to react before missiles were flying. The first transport exploded in a ball of fire. Then the second. The escort fighters scrambled to respond, but Ghost Squadron was already through their formation, moving too fast to track. "Break and attack," Jihoon commanded. The squadron split into pairs, each pair targeting a different enemy ship. Jihoon's wingman was a pilot named Bora. Together they danced through enemy fire, their ships moving as one. A Talaxian fighter got on Bora's tail. Jihoon rolled his ship and came up behind the enemy, firing a short burst. The alien fighter exploded. "Thanks, boss," Bora said. "Stay focused," Jihoon replied. "We're not done yet." The battle lasted only 6 minutes. When it was over, the entire convoy was destroyed. Ghost Squadron had suffered no losses. "All units return to base," Jihoon said. "Mission accomplished." As they flew away, Jihoon allowed himself a small smile. This was just the beginning. Meanwhile, the Defiance attacked the Talaxian battle group. Yoonji's timing was perfect. She caught them completely by surprise. "Fire all forward weapons," she commanded. The Defiance's railguns hammered the enemy flagship. The Talaxian shields held, but barely. The alien ships tried to turn and return fire, but the Defiance was already moving, circling around them like a shark. "They're launching fighters," someone shouted. "Deploy countermeasures and keep firing on the flagship," Yoonji said calmly. "Focus everything on their shield generators." The space around them filled with explosions and weapon fire. The Defiance shook as enemy shots hit the hull. Warning lights flashed. But Unji never lost her cool. "Their shields are down," the tactical officer announced. "Fire everything," Yoonji said. Every weapon on the Defiance fired at once. The Talaxian flagship was torn apart by the barrage. It split in half and exploded, taking 2 escort ships with it in the blast. The remaining enemy ships fled. Yoonji let them go. Her mission was not to chase down every enemy. It was to show them that Earth could fight back. "Damage report," she said as the battle ended. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5. Starboard engine at 60%. 23 casualties, 5 dead." Unji closed her eyes for a moment, honoring the fallen. Then she opened them again. "Get us out of here. Send a message to command. First blood is ours." On Earth, Dongyun's cyber attack was working perfectly. He had infiltrated the Talaxian military communication network and was causing chaos. False orders were being sent to ships across their empire. Supply routes were being changed. Troops were being redirected to the wrong planets. "How long until they figure out what we're doing?" asked one of his teammates. "Maybe a day," Dongyun said. "Maybe less. But by then, the damage will be done." He pulled up another screen, this one showing data he had stolen from Talaxian servers. It was a list of facilities where slaves were kept. Dongyun's jaw tightened as he read the locations. There were more than anyone had guessed. Much more. "Get this to military intelligence immediately," he said, saving the file. "This is what we're really fighting for." Among the rescued children was a teenager named Seojin Ri. He was 17 now, but he had been taken when he was 15. Unlike the younger children, Seojin remembered everything clearly. He remembered the names of the Talaxians who had guarded him. He remembered the layout of the facilities. He remembered which planets he had been taken to. When military intelligence heard about his memories, they asked if he would be willing to help. Seojin agreed immediately. "I want them to pay," he said simply. Using Seojin's information and Dongyun's stolen data, Earth forces identified 4 more slave facilities. Teams were sent to raid each one. The missions were dangerous, but they were successful. In total, they rescued 372 humans. Most were children, but some were young adults who had been captive for years. Each rescue operation was a blow to the Talaxians. More importantly, each rescue gave Earth valuable intelligence about how the slave trade worked. They learned which officials were involved. They learned which planets served as transfer points. They learned that this was not just a Talaxian problem. Other alien species were buying human slaves too. The news made people even angrier. This was not just about one empire. This was about an entire galaxy that saw humanity as inferior. But the early victories came at a terrible cost. Earth's military was small compared to the Talaxians. Every ship lost was a major blow. Every soldier killed was deeply felt. Casualty reports came in daily, and the numbers kept growing. Jihoon lost 2 members of Ghost Squadron in their 3rd mission. Both pilots were friends he had trained with for years. Their deaths weighed heavily on him, but he could not afford to stop. There were more missions to fly, more convoys to attack, more children to save. Yoonji's ship, the Defiance, suffered heavy damage in a second battle and had to return to Earth for repairs. Half her crew was injured. The ship would be out of action for months. Dongyun's cyber warfare team successfully disrupted Talaxian communications, but the enemy adapted quickly. Within 2 weeks, they had closed most of the security holes and were hunting for Earth's hackers. Dongyun had to be constantly moving, constantly adapting, staying one step ahead of enemy countermeasures. Despite the costs, the message was clear. Earth would not back down. Every attack showed the Talaxians that humanity was willing to fight. Every rescue showed the galaxy that Earth protected its own. In his command center, General Taehyung reviewed reports from all fronts. The news was mixed. Earth was winning small victories, but the Talaxians were mobilizing their full military might. Soon the real war would begin. These early strikes were just the opening moves. "Sir," said an aide, "we're receiving reports that the Talaxian Emperor has issued a decree. He's calling for the complete destruction of the human race." Taehyung nodded slowly. He had expected this. The Talaxians could not afford to look weak. If Earth could challenge them and survive, other species might do the same. "Then we'd better make sure we hit them first," Taehyung said. "Get me Ji-hoon, Yoonji, and every other commander we have. We need to plan our next move." As officers scrambled to follow his orders, Taehyung looked at a photo on his desk. It showed the rescued children from the first facility, standing together and smiling nervously. They looked so small and fragile. "We won't let you down," he promised quietly. "No matter what it takes." Admiral Somin Lee looked tired. She had been commanding Earth's fleet for 18 months now, and the war showed no signs of ending. Her hair had turned gray at the temples. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her determination had never wavered. "Status report," she said to her officers gathered around the holographic display. The display showed dozens of star systems, marked with red and blue indicators. Red for Talaxian-controlled space, blue for Earth and its allies. There was far more red than blue. "We've lost 3 more ships this week," reported her tactical officer. "The Talaxians are pushing hard on the outer colonies. Our resources are spread thin." Somin nodded grimly. Earth was fighting a war it could not win through strength alone. They needed something more. They needed an advantage. That advantage came from Dr. Haeun Song, a brilliant scientist working in a secret laboratory on Mars. For months, she had been studying captured Talaxian technology, looking for weaknesses. Finally, she had found something. "Admiral, you need to see this," Haeun said over the communication link. Her image appeared on the screen and she looked excited. "I've developed a new shield system based on harmonic frequency disruption. Simply put, it makes our shields 10 times more effective against Talaxian weapons." "How soon can we install it on our ships?" Salman asked immediately. "The first units can be ready in 3 weeks. But Admiral, there's a problem. The system requires rare elements we don't have enough of. We'll need to find new sources." Salman's mind was already working. "I'll handle it. You just make sure those shields work." While Earth struggled to survive, Ambassador Kyungmin Han was working on a different approach. He had been traveling to neutral worlds, meeting with other alien species in secret. His message was simple. The Talaxians were everyone's enemy. On a distant planet called Viridian, Kyungmin met with representatives from 5 other species. They gathered in a hidden location away from Talaxian eyes. "The Empire has exploited all of you," Kyungmin said. "They take your resources and give nothing back. They threaten you with military force if you resist. How long will you accept this?" A reptilian alien named Thorax spoke. "You ask us to risk everything." "The Talaxians are powerful." "They were powerful," Kyungmin corrected. "But Earth has shown they can be hurt. They can be beaten. Alone, none of us can defeat them. But together, we have a chance." Another alien, a floating creature named Alana, rippled with uncertainty. "What do you offer in return for our alliance?" "Freedom," Kyungmin said simply. "Freedom from fear. Freedom from exploitation. And after the war, a new galactic council where all species have an equal voice." The meeting lasted for hours. There were arguments and doubts. Some species were too afraid to act. But eventually 5 worlds agreed to join Earth in a coalition. It was a small number, but it was a start. The Coalition of Free Worlds was born. Among the rescued humans was young Ji-an, now 19 years old. She had been held captive for 5 years since she was 14. Unlike many of the younger children, young Ji had not broken under the cruelty. Instead, she had gotten angry. After her rescue, doctors and counselors tried to help her heal, but young Ji did not want to heal. She wanted revenge. She approached military recruiters and demanded to join the special forces. "You've been through trauma," the recruiter said gently. "You need time to recover." "I've had 2 years," Youngji replied, her eyes hard. "I know the enemy better than any soldier you have. I know how they think. I know their facilities. I know their weaknesses. Are you going to use that knowledge or waste it?" They accepted her application. Youngji trained harder than anyone else. She pushed herself until her body screamed in protest. She learned to fight, to shoot, to survive behind enemy lines, and she was good at it. Better than good. She was exceptional. 6 months later, Youngji led her first mission. A team of Special Forces operatives infiltrated a Talaxian world where slaves were being held. Youngji knew exactly where to go, exactly what to expect. She had lived in facilities like this. She knew every trick they used. The mission was a success. They rescued 83 slaves from 4 different species. But Youngji did something else too. She found the Talaxian overseer who had tormented her during her captivity. She looked into his eyes and made sure he knew exactly who she was before she arrested him. "Remember me?" she asked in perfect Talaxian. "I was prisoner 747. You said I would never be free. You were wrong." The overseer's face went pale with fear. Youngji smiled coldly and had him taken into custody. News of the rescue spread quickly. But what spread even faster was a video Youngji recorded inside the facility. She spoke directly to the camera, her voice strong and clear. "My name is Youngji An. 5 years ago, I was kidnapped and enslaved by the Talaxian Empire. They tried to break me. They failed. Now I'm here on their world taking back what they stole. To every human still in captivity, we are coming for you. To every alien species suffering under Talaxian rule, join us. And to the Talaxians themselves, your empire is finished. You just don't know it yet." The video was broadcast across the galaxy. It inspired resistance movements on dozens of worlds. Slaves began to rebel. Workers went on strike. Smaller species that the Talaxians had bullied for centuries started to fight back. The Empire's grip was weakening. With the coalition of free worlds providing support, Admiral Salmon planned a major offensive. The target was Orbital Station Krios, a massive Talaxian military base that served as a hub for their fleet operations. If Earth could destroy it, the entire region would be thrown into chaos. "This will be dangerous," Samin told her commanders. "We'll be outnumbered 3-1. Many of us won't come back." "Then we'll make our sacrifice count," said Commander Jihoon, who now led an entire fighter wing. The attack began at dawn, local time. Earth's fleet, supported by ships from the coalition, dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly in front of the station. The Talaxians scrambled to respond, but the attackers had surprise on their side. Jihoon led his fighters against the station's defensive guns. "All wings, focus on the shield generators." "We need those shields down." Explosions bloomed across space as fighters dueled and capital ships exchanged fire. The battle was brutal and chaotic. Ships on both sides were destroyed in the first minutes of fighting. Admiral Soman watched from her flagship, making split-second decisions. "Redirect the Third Fleet to the station's eastern quadrant. Their defenses are weakest there." A Talaxian cruiser targeted Soman's ship, hammering it with weapons fire. The ship shook violently. Soman grabbed the arms of her chair to stay upright. "Return fire," she commanded. "All batteries!" The flagship's weapons tore into the enemy cruiser, but more Talaxian ships were arriving every minute. This was going to be close. Dr. Hayun's new shield technology made the difference. Earth's ships could withstand punishment that would have destroyed them before. They pressed forward, taking heavy fire but refusing to retreat. Youngji was not in space. She was leading a ground team that had infiltrated the station itself. While the battle raged outside, her team moved through the corridors, planting explosives on critical systems. "Charges set," she reported over the radio. "Recommend all friendly forces clear the area." "Negative," Salmon's voice came back. "We need more time to destroy their command center." Youngji looked at the timer on the explosives. They would detonate in 10 minutes. "Admiral, if we don't blow this station soon, reinforcements will arrive and we'll lose everything." There was a long pause. Salmon was calculating odds, weighing lives. Finally, she spoke. "Blow the station. All ships, emergency retreat. Go, go, go." The Earth fleet turned and ran. Talaxian ships gave chase, firing at their backs. Jihoon and his fighters covered the retreat, buying precious seconds with their lives. 8 fighters were destroyed before they reached the safe zone. Then the station exploded. The blast was enormous, a miniature sun that consumed everything nearby. Talaxian ships caught in the explosion were vaporized instantly. The shockwave pushed both fleets back, tumbling ships through space. When the light faded, orbital station Krios was gone. So was a third of Admiral Soman's fleet. Soman stared at the casualty reports. 5,000 dead, 12 ships destroyed, countless wounded. But the station was destroyed and the Talaxians had lost a critical military hub. Was it worth it? Asked her second-in-command quietly. Soman thought of the rescued children. She thought of the slaves still waiting to be freed. She thought of all the species suffering under Talaxian rule. Yes, she said firmly. It was worth it. News of the victory spread across human space and beyond. The coalition of free worlds grew stronger. More species joined the fight against the Empire. The tide was turning, but the Talaxian Emperor was not finished. Enraged by his losses, he issued a new decree. Earth itself would be destroyed. He assembled the largest fleet ever seen in the galaxy and pointed it toward humanity's homeworld. The final battle was coming. The sky above Earth was filled with ships, hundreds of them, forming defensive lines around the planet. Every vessel humanity could muster was here. Every ally who had joined the coalition had sent what forces they could spare. But everyone knew it would not be enough. The Talaxian Imperial fleet was coming, and it was massive. President Dayun Kang stood in the command center deep below the surface of Earth. Around her, military officers coordinated the defense. General Taehyung Nam was at the main tactical display, his face grim. How long? Taehyung asked. 2 hours until they arrive, Taehyung replied. Maybe less. Daeun looked at the numbers on the screen. The Talaxians had brought 500 warships. Earth and its allies had 180. The mathematics of the battle were simple and brutal. We're going to lose, said an aide quietly. Maybe, Daeun said, but we'll make them pay for every meter of space. And if Earth falls, the rest of the galaxy will remember that we fought to the end. On the bridge of her new flagship, Admiral Soman Lee prepared for the battle of her life. She had lost so many ships, so many good people, but she refused to give up, not now. Not when everything was at stake. All ships, this is Admiral Lee, she broadcast to the fleet. Today we defend our home. Not just Earth, but the idea that no species should be enslaved, that no child should be stolen from their family. The Talaxians believe might makes right. Today we show them they are wrong. In his fighter, Commander Jihoon Park checked his weapons one final time. Ghost Squadron had been rebuilt after heavy losses. New pilots flew beside him now. Young men and women who had joined the war to avenge loved ones or to fight for a better future. Boss, are we really going to win this? Asked his wingman, a young pilot named Hansel Jihoon, thought about lying about giving false comfort. But these pilots deserved the truth. I don't know, he said honestly, but we're going to fight like we can. That's all anyone can ask. Far from Earth on the Talaxian homeworld called Talaxia Prime, young Jian led a desperate mission. While the Empire's fleet attacked Earth, she and a team of Special Forces operatives had infiltrated the capital city. Their goal was to reach the Imperial Palace and capture the Emperor himself. It was a long shot. It was probably suicide, but if they could take the Emperor, the war might end without Earth being destroyed. Youngji's team moved through the streets disguised as servants. She wore the gray uniform she had once been forced to wear as a slave. The sight of it made her skin crawl, but it was the perfect disguise. Nobody looked twice at servants. They reached the palace and slipped inside through a service entrance. Talaxian guards were everywhere, but they were looking for threats from the sky, not from within. Palace security is tight, whispered Quan, one of Youngji's teammates. We'll never reach the throne room. We don't need to reach it, Youngji replied. We just need to get close enough. She had a backup plan, a very dangerous backup plan. Back at Earth, the Talaxian fleet arrived. 500 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They filled the space around Earth like a swarm of angry insects. The Emperor's voice boomed across all communication channels. Humans of Earth, you have defied the natural order. You have attacked the Empire. You have rejected your proper place in the galaxy. For these crimes, your world will be destroyed. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick. On the command center, President Daeun looked at General Taehyung. He shook his head. She nodded and opened a channel. This is President Kang of Earth. We will never surrender. We will never stop fighting. And when you look back on this day, You will regret that you ever challenged humanity. So be it, the Emperor said. Begin the attack! The Talaxian fleet moved forward as one. Earth's defensive fleet moved to intercept. The largest space battle in human history began. Jihoon led Ghost Squadron into the heart of the enemy formation. His fighters weaved between massive Talaxian battleships, launching missiles at their engines and weapon systems. Around him, the space lit up with explosions and weapon fire. Target the command ship, Jihoon shouted. If we can take out their flagship, we can throw them into confusion. Ghost Squadron dove toward a massive vessel at the center of the enemy fleet, but the Talaxians were ready. Fighter screens rose to meet them. Jihoon's sensors lit up with enemy contacts. We've got company, Hansol yelled. Break and engage, Jihoon commanded. Stay alive and keep fighting. The dogfight was brutal. Ships exploded all around him. Jihoon lost track of how many enemies he shot down. He also lost track of how many friends he lost. All that mattered was surviving one more second, firing one more shot, destroying one more enemy. Admiral Soman directed the capital ships, sending them where they were needed most. Her flagship traded fire with 3 Talaxian cruisers at once. The shields were holding thanks to Dr. Hayen's technology, but they would not last forever. Ma'am, we're losing ships on the western flank, reported an officer. Redirect the coalition forces to support them, Soman ordered. And someone get me an update on those Talaxian reinforcements. They're holding position, ma'am. Looks like they're waiting for us to exhaust ourselves before they join the fight. Soman cursed under her breath. The Talaxians were being smart, letting the first wave wear down Earth's defenses before committing their reserve forces. She needed something to change the situation. On Talaxia Prime, Youngji and her team reached a position overlooking the throne room. The Emperor was inside, watching the battle through holographic displays. He looked pleased, confident in his victory. I can't get a clear shot, said Min-seok, the team's sniper. You don't need to, Youngji said. She pulled out a small device, something the engineers had built specially for this mission. It was a transmitter powerful enough to broadcast to the entire Talaxian communication network. She pointed a camera at the throne room and activated it. Suddenly, across every Talaxian ship, every station, every world in the Empire, the Emperor's face appeared. But he was not making a grand speech. He was watching the battle with a cruel smile, making comments about how humans were dying. Look at them run. The Emperor's voice echoed across the Empire. Pathetic creatures. When this is over, we will enslave every human we can find. The rest we will exterminate. Let this be a lesson to all inferior species. The transmission was going everywhere, not just to Talaxian forces, but to neutral worlds, to species that the Empire had claimed were treated fairly. The Emperor's mask of civility was torn away, revealing the monster beneath. Youngji spoke into the camera, her voice steady. This is what you serve. This is what your empire stands for. Slavery, genocide, cruelty. But it does not have to be this way. Join us. Help us end this. Alarms blared in the palace. Guards rushed toward Youngji's position. Time to go, she shouted. Her team fought their way out of the palace, leaving chaos behind them. The transmission had done its job. Across the Empire, military units began to hesitate. Some refused orders. Some switched sides entirely. At Earth, the battle raged for hours. The Talaxians pressed forward relentlessly. Earth's fleet fought with desperate courage. But the numbers were against them. Captain Jiwon Kim, back in command of a new ship after the Horizon's Edge was destroyed, rammed her vessel into a Talaxian battleship. The collision destroyed both ships, but it saved 3 smaller Earth vessels that would have been destroyed otherwise. Jihoon's fighter took a hit that destroyed one engine. He kept flying on the other engine, refusing to retreat. When his weapons ran out of ammunition, he used his damaged ship as a missile, ejecting at the last second before impact. All across the battlefield, humans and their allies made similar sacrifices. They gave everything they had. Then something unexpected happened. Parts of the Talaxian fleet stopped fighting. Ships began to withdraw. Some even turned their weapons on their own former allies. What's happening? General Taehyung demanded. Sir, we're receiving transmissions from Talaxian ships. They're asking to defect. They saw the Emperor's transmission. They don't want to fight for him anymore. Daeun looked at Taehyung with wide eyes. Youngji did it. She actually did it. The Talaxian fleet descended into chaos. Ships fired on each other. Commanders argued over open channels. The formation fell apart. Admiral Somin saw the opportunity and seized it. All ships full offensive. Hit them now while they're confused. The Earth fleet surged forward. The Talaxians, already fighting among themselves, could not mount an effective defense. The battle turned from a desperate defense into a rout. On Talaxia Prime, Youngji's team fought through the streets toward their extraction point. They had completed their mission, but the cost was high. 2 teammates were dead, 3 were badly wounded. Youngji herself had lost her left arm in an explosion, but she kept moving, kept fighting. They reached the extraction ship just as Talaxian forces surrounded them. We're not going to make it, Quan said. Yes, we are, Youngji replied through gritted teeth. She provided cover fire while the others boarded. When everyone else was safe, she dove into the ship. It took off with Talaxian forces firing at them from below. They escaped into space just as Earth's fleet began its final push. The Talaxian defense crumbled. The Emperor's forces were defeated. In the aftermath, the Talaxian Emperor tried to activate a doomsday weapon that would destroy multiple worlds. But his own military commanders,